You know what's funny? People love talking about betrayal like it's a black and white thing. Like there's always one innocent party and one evil, heartless monster. That's what I've become in everyone's eyes. The monster. The girl who cheated on her perfect fiancé and humiliated him in front of both families and all their friends. The girl who destroyed a wedding, broke hearts, and deserved everything that came after. But no one's asking what it felt like to be me. To wake up every day next to someone who barely noticed I was there. To spend 3 years building a life with a man who could talk for hours about software updates and football stats, but would shut down the second I said, "Can we talk about us?" To smile through every bridal fitting, engagement dinner, and Pinterest board update while something inside me quietly withered. My name is Olivia. I'm 27 years old. I was supposed to be married last month. And yes, I cheated. But that's not how the story really begins. The real beginning is 3 years ago when I met Nathan. Everyone said he was perfect. My parents adored him. He had a real job, senior software engineer at a fast-growing startup. He was polite, never swore in front of my dad, remembered my mom's birthday, and looked great in a suit. He had a car that didn't rattle, a 401k, and an apartment that didn't smell like weed or takeout. He said all the right things, showed up on time, held the door open. On paper, he was a 10. So when he asked me to move in with him after only 8 months, I said yes. Because honestly, what was I waiting for? I was 24. My friends were starting to settle down, and Nathan seemed like the kind of man you marry. Safe, predictable, reliable. But here's the thing no one ever tells you about choosing reliable. Sometimes it's another word for emotionally vacant. The first 6 months were fine. We went to brunch, hosted game nights, took weekend trips to Asheville. He'd kiss my forehead when he left for work and bring me back oat milk lattes. It was sweet. But somewhere along the line, things got quiet. Not the comfortable kind of quiet. The I'm talking and you're nodding but you're not really hearing me kind. He stopped asking questions. Stopped noticing when I wore a new dress or changed my hair. Conversations turned into checklists. Groceries, rent, his mom's visit next weekend. And sex, let's just say if intimacy were a plant, ours had died months ago and no one remembered to water it. I told myself this was normal. Long-term relationships settle. Grown-up love isn't supposed to feel like fireworks. My mom used to say, find someone who'll build a home with you, not someone who sets it on fire. So I quieted that small voice inside me that said something was missing. I let the days blend together. Nathan and I got engaged during a trip to Charleston. Not in some grand candlelit restaurant, but at the Airbnb kitchen counter while I was rinsing blueberries. He handed me a ring and said, "So, you want to make this official?" I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. I said yes. Not because I was swept away in romance or because I imagined growing old with him. I said yes because we'd already invested so much time. Because everyone expected us to. Because I didn't know what else to do. That was about 8 months ago. The first person I told besides my mom was my best friend Mia. She squealed and hugged me and started crying in the middle of Target's bath towel aisle. "You did it," she said. "You found the one." I smiled, but a small part of me whispered, "Did I?" And then, 3 weeks later, I got a message that changed everything. It was from Elias. Just seeing his name on my phone made my chest tighten. 5 years. That's how long it had been since we last spoke. 5 years since we broke up in a storm of miscommunication, grad school plans, and my fear that he'd never grow up. 5 years since I'd blocked him on everything after he missed my birthday and told me I was too structured for his life. The message was simple. Just saw your engagement post. Congrats, I guess. Weird to see your name pop up. Hope you're doing okay. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to delete it and pretend I never saw it. Instead, I typed, "Weird is one word for it. I'm okay. You?" That's how it started. Just messages. Safe, nostalgic, harmless little texts. Talking about our college memories. The road trip to Nashville. That time we got lost in the mountains and ended up sleeping in the back of his Jeep. The way we used to laugh at bad indie movies and share midnight pints of cookie dough ice cream. He asked what I was doing with my life. I told him about the engagement, my job in marketing, our tiny apartment with the gray walls. He said he'd always imagined I'd end up with someone wild, someone creative, someone who challenged me. "Guess you went with stability instead," he wrote. I wanted to defend Nathan. I really did. But instead, I typed, yeah, I guess I did. 1 week later, we met for coffee. I didn't tell Nathan. I told him I had a client meeting near the cafe. It was a lie. A small one, I thought, a necessary one. Elias looked the same, but not. His hair was longer, a little scruffier. His eyes were softer somehow, like life had mellowed him out. He smelled like cedar and rain, like he always used to. We sat for over an hour, catching up. He asked questions Nathan never thought to ask, about my dreams, my art, my frustrations. He remembered that I used to love painting sunsets. That I once said I wanted to write a children's book. Nathan didn't even remember my favorite kind of tea. When Elias touched my wrist briefly while laughing at something I said, it sent a jolt through my spine. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Nathan, who was already snoring softly, and stared at the ceiling wondering if I'd just cracked open something I couldn't close again. I didn't plan to see Elias again. But of course, I did. The second time I saw Elias, it was a Thursday. I'd told Nathan I was grabbing dinner with Mia. Technically not a full lie. Mia had invited me out. I just declined in my head. Elias and I met at this little ramen place we used to love back in college. The one with the mismatched chairs and Polaroids stuck to the walls, and that one waitress who always gave us extra toppings if we tipped in cash. He was waiting for me outside, leaning against the brick wall with his hands in his coat pockets like he used to. Cool without trying, the kind of posture Nathan had never once pulled off in his life. I remember thinking, this is dangerous, but then I smiled anyway. Dinner turned into dessert. Dessert turned into a long walk down the river path. We talked about nothing and everything, the kind of conversations I hadn't had in years. With Nathan, it had become all about logistics, bills, family plans, groceries. With Elias, I talked about the books I missed reading. The idea of taking a solo trip somewhere in Europe. My fear that I was becoming someone I didn't even recognize. He listened like it mattered. At one point, I stopped walking and asked him, do you think people just forget who they used to be? Like slowly, without noticing? He looked at me for a second too long before saying, I think some people let themselves be forgotten, and some fight to be remembered. That sentence wrecked me. I went home that night feeling like my chest was full of bees. Not guilt, not yet, just electricity. The kind that buzzes under your skin and whispers, you're still alive. I kissed Nathan that night when I got in bed. I think it startled him. He blinked, confused, and asked, what was that for? I lied and said, just because. But the truth, I was testing myself, seeing if anything was left. There wasn't. After that, it didn't take long. Elias and I started texting daily, then hourly. I'd wake up to good morning messages, midday memes, long 11 p.m. confessions. It felt intimate in a way that had nothing to do with sex and everything to do with presence. With being truly seen. And still, I told myself I wasn't cheating, because I hadn't crossed that line yet. The lies came easier than I expected. Running errands, late meeting, spin class. Nathan never questioned any of it. Maybe because he trusted me, or maybe because he just didn't notice. God, that hurt more than anything. That I could disappear for hours, and he wouldn't even blink. Elias noticed everything. Like when I mentioned craving that one lavender shortbread cookie from a bakery downtown, he brought me an entire box the next day. Or when I said I'd been anxious about a presentation at work, he sent a playlist titled You're Gonna Kill It, with all my old college favorites. He remembered things Nathan never even asked. One rainy afternoon, we met for coffee. The tiny cafe was almost empty, our mugs steaming between us. Elias reached across the table, brushed my fingers with his, and didn't let go. I should have pulled away. Instead, I stared at his hand on mine and realized how long it had been since anyone touched me like I mattered. Not like a routine, not like a checkmark, but like I was art. He whispered, I've missed this, missed you. And my throat closed up. That night, I told myself I wouldn't see him again. The next day, I texted him, when are you free? It got physical 2 weeks later. After a late movie, I was supposed to be at a networking event. Instead, I was tangled in Elias's sheets, feeling 21 again. I won't describe the details. This isn't some cheap confession. But I will say this. I cried afterward. Not from shame, from relief, because for the first time in years, I felt wanted. I felt awake. You probably think this is the part where I say I felt guilty. I didn't. Not then. I convinced myself I deserved this. That Nathan had let our relationship rot slowly while pretending everything was fine. That I had tried, God, I had tried, to bring it back to life. Date nights, conversations, therapy podcasts, even suggested couples counseling once, which he laughed off and called dramatic. I told myself that I hadn't chosen to cheat. I'd chosen to survive. That Elias was a lifeline in a sea of numbness, and I told myself, over and over again, that I could stop any time. I couldn't. We started seeing each other weekly, then twice a week. Sometimes we just talked. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. Either way, it was the only time I felt like me again. Nathan noticed I was happier. I think he thought wedding planning was making me glow. He started saying things like, "You've been in a really good mood lately." I'd smile and kiss his cheek and nod. And in those moments, the guilt would flicker to life, briefly. But not enough to stop me. Not enough to outweigh the fire. The thing about building two lives at once is that eventually they start to overlap. At first I thought I was careful, precise. I deleted texts, I turned off notifications, I made sure my stories were airtight. Work event here, spin class there, dinner with Mia, always with a time-stamped photo ready if Nathan ever asked. But even the best liars get sloppy when they feel untouchable. It started small. One night, Nathan looked at me over takeout Thai and asked, "Hey, did you say you were at bar class last Tuesday or Wednesday?" I blinked, chopsticks midair. "Tuesday," I said without missing a beat. He nodded, slow. "Just thought you told me Wednesday." I laughed it off, made a joke about how work stress was messing with my schedule. He smiled, but I could see it. That flicker in his eyes. That quiet, suspicious tilt of the head that said, "I don't believe you, but I don't have proof yet." From then on, I started noticing it more. The way he'd glance at my phone when it buzzed. How he started asking, "Who's that?" a little too casually. How he lingered near the door when I said I was going out, his arms crossed like he was trying not to ask something. He never outright accused me. But he stopped being blind, and suddenly every moment with Elias felt riskier. More exposed. I started texting less during the day, turning off location sharing, watching my words like I was walking through a minefield. But of course, Elias noticed too. "You okay?" he asked during one of our meetups. "You seem distant lately." I wanted to tell him everything about Nathan's questions, about the pressure building under my skin like a ticking bomb, about the nightmare I had where Nathan burst into Elias's apartment mid-kiss and everything shattered into flames. Instead I said, "Just wedding stress." Elias looked at me, quiet. "You ever think about not going through with it?" That question hung in the air like smoke. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Sometimes," I whispered. He didn't say anything after that. Just reached out and laced his fingers with mine across the table, and I let him. The fights with Nathan started soon after. They weren't dramatic, not at first. Just sharp, tense, irritated. He started saying things like, "You're always on your phone lately. You didn't tell me about that dinner with your coworkers. Why are you always so tired when you come home?" I snapped back. "Why are you so paranoid? God, can I have 5 minutes of privacy without being interrogated? You're acting like a jealous teenager." Looking back, I see how cruel that was. How I used his suspicion as fuel for my own justification. Every time he questioned me, I told myself, "See, this is why you're unhappy. This is why you need Elias." I painted myself as the victim of a controlling, insecure fiancé, while I was the one lying through my teeth every single day. But the worst part? A tiny, dark part of me started to enjoy the lying. The thrill of getting away with it. The secret power in knowing I was living two lives, and he didn't even know which one was real anymore. Until one night, he found the receipt. It was a Saturday. I'd told Nathan I was meeting Mia and a few girls from work for drinks downtown. In reality, Elias had taken me to this new tapas bar. Dim lighting, live jazz, a place that felt far removed from my regular world. We laughed. We kissed in the corner booth. He whispered, "Run away with me," half joking, and I'd smiled like I wasn't terrified by how tempting that sounded. But the next day, Nathan was cleaning out my car before a family brunch and found the receipt tucked between the seats. He didn't say anything at first, just held it up casually. "You said you were at Lulu's on 5th, right? This is from Madrigal Lounge on 9th. I froze. My brain spun in 5 directions at once. "Oh, right," I stammered. "Mia changed plans last minute. I forgot to mention." He tilted his head. "You forgot to mention you went to an entirely different place?" I laughed, but it came out thin. "God, Nathan, I was out with my girlfriends, not plotting a murder." He nodded slowly, then dropped the receipt on the counter like it weighed 100 pounds. "Okay. Just okay." But his tone said otherwise. After that, things weren't the same. He got quieter, colder. He started sleeping with his back to me. His phone suddenly had a passcode. He stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. I started panicking, not about the lies, but about losing control. If he found out before I could explain, before I could make him understand why, then everything I had built, both lives, would collapse. So I doubled down. I deleted every message from Elias as soon as I read it. I set my phone to Do Not Disturb during dinner. I told Mia to cover for me if Nathan ever asked where I'd been. But all of that still wasn't enough, because 3 days later I made a mistake. A small one. But it was all it took. The mistake was stupid. Tiny. Barely a flick of the wrist, but it changed everything. That morning Nathan was in the shower, getting ready for work. I was lying in bed, scrolling through a string of late-night messages from Elias, ones we probably should have deleted, but hadn't. I smiled at the screen, my thumb hovering over a meme he'd sent, a cartoon couple kissing under a blanket fort with the caption, "Real love doesn't need chandeliers." I replied with a heart. Then I heard the water turn off. I panicked. Not because I was doing something I hadn't done 100 times before, but because I didn't feel like being watched. Judged. Interrogated again. So I did what I always did when I was hiding something. I flipped the phone screen down and placed it on the nightstand. That was it. No message thread closed. No screen locked. Just a phone face down buzzing once as I stood to go make coffee. Nathan came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, yawning. "Be down in a sec," I said over my shoulder. He grunted something in response. I walked to the kitchen, put on water, started laying out mugs. I didn't hear the footsteps. Didn't hear the faint click of the text thread opening. Didn't hear the breath leave his body. When I returned with 2 steaming mugs of coffee, he was sitting on the bed, my phone in his hand, his face drained of all color. For a second I didn't understand. I thought maybe he'd read something random. Work emails, old notes. Then I saw the screen. Saw the text bubble from Elias. "Can't stop thinking about last night. Your skin, your voice, everything, your poison, and I love the taste." My breath caught. I froze in the doorway. Nathan, he didn't look at me, didn't speak, just scrolled. Scroll. Each flick of his finger on the screen was a blade. Then finally, after what felt like hours, he spoke. His voice was low. "To Livia." He didn't say it like a name. He said it like a funeral. I walked toward him, shaking, coffee still in my hands like a stupid peace offering. "Nathan, it's not what it looks like." He turned the screen toward me. A screenshot Elias had sent of our very first text thread. "Just saw your engagement post. Congrats, I guess." Weird is one word for it. He scrolled again. Messages about missing touches, secret meetups, jokes about Nathan being clueless, plans made while Nathan was working, sleeping, existing. He read them out loud, not angrily, flatly, mechanically, like reciting someone else's obituary. "Do you think about me when he's inside you? I miss the way you gasp when I bite your neck. You make me feel like I'm 20 again." I dropped the mugs. They hit the floor with a crash. One shattered. The other rolled under the bed. I fell to my knees and scrambled, not for the coffee, but for the phone. "Nathan, stop, please." He pulled it back. "Let me finish." "No," I whispered, voice cracking. "You don't understand." He finally looked up at me. And what I saw in his eyes wasn't rage. It was nothing. Blankness. Emptiness. Like I'd already died to him. "You've been lying to me for how long?" he asked. I hesitated. That was the moment I could have told the whole truth. Instead I said, "It wasn't serious. Just texting. Emotional. That's all." His jaw tightened. "Did you sleep with him?" I couldn't lie. Not with that phone full of evidence in his hands. "A few times," I whispered. It didn't mean anything. He stood. I took a step back. He walked slowly toward the wall and, without warning, hurled the phone across the room. It exploded against the drywall in a burst of glass and plastic. I flinched. Silence swallowed the room. When he turned back to me, his voice was colder than I'd ever heard. "I was going to spend my life with you." "I know." "You don't." He shook his head. You don't know anything. You don't know what it's like to trust someone so much you stop guarding your heart and then find out they've been throwing knives at it every night while you sleep. Tears were streaming down my face now. I tried to reach for him. He stepped back. I don't even know who you are. He left that night. Packed a duffel bag and slept at his brother's, I think. I don't know. He didn't tell me, didn't text, didn't answer my calls. He came back the next day only to grab more clothes, his laptop, his toiletries. Didn't say a word to me, just walked around the apartment like I wasn't there. It was the first time I understood what it meant to be ghosted while alive. In the days that followed, I tried to apologize. I cried. I wrote him a letter. I begged for a conversation, one honest conversation. Not to beg for forgiveness, but to explain. But he wouldn't even look at me. And the worst part, he wasn't angry anymore. He was calm. Too calm. The silence had shape. It was forming something. I just didn't know what. People think the worst part of being caught is the moment you're exposed. But they're wrong. The worst part is the waiting. The space between knowing you've been discovered and not knowing what happens next. Nathan didn't scream. He didn't curse. He didn't pack up and disappear forever. He just stopped speaking. A full-body silence, heavier than any blow. And that silence? It gave me hope. False, dangerous, pathetic hope. Maybe I told myself he just needed time. Time to process, time to remember the years we'd spent together, time to understand that what happened wasn't black and white. We had built a life. We'd signed vendor contracts. My parents had sent out the invitations. His mother had already bought her dress. Surely he wouldn't burn everything to the ground because I made several mistakes. I spent the next few days walking on glass, cooking his favorite meals, leaving handwritten notes by his coffee mug, dressing in the blue blouse he once said made my eyes look like winter mornings. But he never responded. Just left earlier for work. Slept on the couch, came home late, kept his eyes on anything but me. Still, I told myself this was progress, because at least he hadn't left for good. I confided in Mia, told her we were going through a rough patch. She gave me that look, the one that says she doesn't believe you but doesn't want to dig. I didn't tell her about Elias, or the texts, or the shattered phone. I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Nathan's parents arrived in town a few days before the bridal shower. He greeted them with hugs, laughed with his mom in the kitchen, poured wine for his dad like nothing had happened. I watched him from the hallway, cold with confusion. He hadn't spoken more than 5 words to me all week. How was he suddenly so normal? But then again, maybe this was his way of coping, pretending until we made it work. I wanted to believe that. So I did. The bridal shower was set for Saturday evening. A cozy upscale restaurant downtown, private room, string lights along the windows. My mother had spent months planning it. Floral menus, custom name cards, champagne with gold dust. My bridesmaids were all flying in. The photographer had already confirmed twice. The morning of, I stared at my reflection for a long time. My under eyes were puffier than usual. I'd lost weight, my collarbones sharper, my fingers twitchy, but with a little contour and the right lashes, I could still pass for the glowing bride-to-be. I chose the navy dress Nathan always said made me look elegant but dangerous. I curled my hair. I even wore the necklace he gave me for our 2-year anniversary. Gold, with a tiny opal pendant. Maybe tonight would be the turning point. Maybe if he saw me, really saw me, he'd remember why he chose me. I arrived before him. My mother was buzzing with excitement, her hands fluttering like nervous birds. "He's lucky to have you," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "You've turned into such a graceful woman, Liv." I smiled, hollow. Nathan walked in 15 minutes later, looking devastatingly polished in a slate gray suit. His hair perfectly styled, face unreadable. He kissed my cheek like a man signing a peace treaty. We mingled. We posed for photos. My father gave a small, choked-up speech about watching his little girl grow into someone so thoughtful, so loyal. I nearly choked on my champagne. Nathan was calm all evening. Polite, quiet, but present. He laughed at the right jokes, clinked glasses, took a photo with my grandmother. He didn't look at me once. Then dessert arrived. Champagne flutes were refilled. My maid of honor tapped her glass for attention. "Okay," she said. "Now it's the groom's turn." Applause. Whistles. Someone shouted, "Speech!" Nathan stood slowly, smiled like a politician. "First of all," he began, "thank you all for being here. It means the world to us. Planning a wedding is a lot of work, but having this village behind us has made it all feel worth it. More clapping. He raised his glass. And tonight, I wanted to do something special. I've been collecting little moments from our journey. Messages, memories, things that remind me why Olivia and I fell in love. He turned toward the wall-mounted projector, the one the restaurant used for corporate slideshows. I felt my stomach lurch. He opened his laptop, plugged in the HDMI cable, smiled wider. I call this presentation The Truth About Us. The first slide appeared, a photo of us at a pumpkin patch last fall. I let out a tiny laugh of relief. Then the second slide hit. A screenshot, a text from Elias. I dreamed about you again last night. Same dream, your hands, my back. That little sound you make when I gasps, audible, sharp. My brain froze, my vision tunneled. I heard someone choke on their drink. He clicked again, another screenshot. Me, I miss you more than I should. He's asleep beside me. I feel like a monster. You're not, you're human, and mine. Click. Do you think he knows? Only if he stopped being blind. A sob behind me. My mother, my father's face had turned to stone. More screenshots. Dozens. My words, my secrets. My naked confessions. Projected 6 feet tall for everyone I loved to see. I couldn't breathe. Nathan looked around the room calmly. I just wanted you all to know the truth. Before the wedding. Before the champagne toasts and the dance floor. Before we called this thing forever. He turned to me. For the first time that night. Olivia, I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for, but it won't be with me. Then he closed his laptop, raised his glass one last time, to honesty, and walked out, leaving behind silence, shock, and the ruins of a life I thought I was still in control of.